Welcome to United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America on 100.5 and 790 News Radio WSGW and online at WSGW.com. Here is your host, Kareem Bowen.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of United Shades of Gray. I am your host, Kareem Bowen. So glad that you guys have decided to come in and to be with us once again for another prolific conversation on race in America. We have a great show carved out for you today. I have with me in the studio the wonderful, the illustrious, the Arena McKissick. Why don't you say hello to those who are part of our USG audience?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone.
And also, as you know, we are always in the studio with the Rob Father. And Rob, why don't you give a shout out to our people? I know we're just a couple of days when this show airs, a couple of days beyond Veterans Day. But as one who has served our community, Rob, I want to give you just a spotlight. Thank you for your service and your dedication and making sure that America is this great land of opportunity and freedom for all. So thank you for your services. And why don't you give a shout out to our people?
Well, thank you very much, Kareem, and shout out to our United Shades of Gray audience. Happy to be here and always happy to have served this country and this democracy that I still believe in and love and cherish very much and very sensitive about, politically. So happy to be here and shout out to all my fellow veterans who have served and are still serving in this country's armed services.
Awesome. So we want to thank those of you who are out there also, that have made America great. We hear the slogan, "Make America Great Again," but we are a great nation with great values and great people and great opportunities. And so I certainly thank all of those who have been a part of the armed forces and who have stayed strong and who have produced, strength and resolve in the midst of chaos to make sure that we remain the nation that we are here on today. So I want to get right into the swing of things so that we don't miss any time on today. But I do want to talk about what's hot off the press. There's a couple of things, and there's some things, Rob, that I did not include in my opening that I'm going to talk about really briefly. And Aaron, feel free to jump in and be a part of this conversation as we go forward. But have you heard about the concert? I think it's Travis Scott. Yes, Travis Scott, right, the concert in Texas.
Right.
All right.
Astro World.
They're doing, first of all, they were saying there were 50,000 people that were a part of this concert.
Yes.
But now they're coming out in the lawsuits. We know that we are a very litigious society and that lawsuits were going to be coming sooner or later. There's one law firm that says that they have over 100 lawsuits that they are now representing, litigants that they're now representing. And these not only are with the concert promoters, but now they're going after the artists. This morning, Drake was named as one of the parties to one of the lawsuits because after everything was going on.
You mean as a plaintiff or as a defendant?
As a defendant, because after everything was going on and people were being smashed and it sounds like a big mosh pit. And I guess this is typical. I don't know much about.
There are mosh pits at concerts like this of this sort.
Right.
And we should mention that Travis Scott, for those who don't know, is a rapper. Well-known rapper. I don't listen to his music. Whatnot. He's out of my generation, but he's a rapper.
Rob, you're a black man and you're not listening to rappers like Travis Scott.
No, I don't listen to a lot of rappers. You'd be surprised what I listen to. So.
I'm just joking.
For my age,
Yeah. You're out of that pool. But anyways, Travis, he's also a native of this particular place. He's a native of whatever city
Texas.
it was.
Yeah, I forget.
Yeah. And so they had this huge concert. As soon as the music started, people were pushing, they were getting smashed, and it was just a wave of people moving.
Actually, when he came on board, there were other artists there.
That were there.
He came on stage.
Then
a lot of people started moving forward, whatnot, and doing so. I don't want to steal your thunder here, but they crushed a lot of people, stepping on people, whatnot.
That's exactly what was going on. Right. So I guess Drake came to the stage and he was performing, I guess, and so now he's being sued because no one stopped the concert. And so you're seeing video and these little clips of people trying to let the promoters and cameramen and anybody know that, hey, it's crazy out here. And so they saw the artist Travis Scott and I guess Drake performing and looking at what was going on, but never stopping the show. Yeah,
well, actually, Travis, when he came on, now from what I read, initially, now a lot of reports have changed, but what I read, Travis saw an ambulance in the crowd there somewhere, and then he stopped performing. Now, other artists were supposed to perform that day and that weekend, including my favorite band, Earth, Wind, and Fire, was supposed to be there that Saturday. But they did cancel the concert once he stopped performing to see what was going on because people were getting hurt. That's the story that I read initially when it first happened.
Well, you know how that goes. With everybody has an opinion, and every story has two sides. But it's going on now. There's all of these lawsuits that are being filed everywhere. I think there were 8 people that actually ended up losing their life during the course of this, and then there are some other people that are
2 young children
yet in critical condition. When I saw the ages, I'm like, I would never allow my 14, 15-year-old kid to go to this type of concert, knowing that there are certain things that are expected or a part of the concert going experience. And you know, my hearts and prayers go out to everyone. That doesn't mean that you don't have the right to be safe wherever you go. And that, you know, that the promoters don't have the responsibility to make sure that the concert venue is safe. But it was just something that I thought was really crazy.
Right. Well, I would think that from what I know about show business, which is not very much, but I know enough.
Rob, what do you know about show business?
Well, you're the show business man. These performers do have liability insurance.
Absolutely.
For things like this.
It's going to get a workout.
And so while the suits are coming, I'm not sure Travis Scott expressed his remorse about a lot of this that happened here, which is very cool. You know, he didn't wait, several days or what have you. So the whole lawsuits, some of them are going to be frivolous, and others may be real, but they can't really sue him because it's not his responsibility for what happens in the crowd. He's on stage. He's not there in the crowd doing anything.
Unless they determine that it is his responsibility.
They could do that too, based on security and things of that sort.
And based upon
all that, the investigation is still going on.
Exactly.
So it's going to be quite interesting. So I wanted to throw that out there, but in additional news that is kind of it's not similar, but it's in the entertainment world. The Packers QB Rodgers, I'm sure you heard the story by
Aaron
now.
Rodgers, yeah.
This is so funny because when we talk about things like we've been talking about the book White Fragility,
right?
And the author Robin DiAngelo, she talked, and so that those of you who are listening, when we were doing that book, understand that book was not an academic book. It was a book that was about her opinion, her thoughts. There's no statistical analysis.
Mm-hmm.
She was giving just her opinion on what she thought. But when we look at what takes place with this Green Bay, this Packers quarterback Rodgers, okay, so he lies about his vaccination, and he did it. He was smooth with how he did it.
Oh yes,
so have you been vaccinated? Yes, I'm fully immunized, and no one would ever think about okay, so anything different, because it sounds like you're agreeing to the fact that yes, I have been vaccinated.
Right.
Well. And he was getting away with it. He was attending things. I guess that the NFL has a rule that if you're not fully vaccinated, you can't be around other players.
That's right.
More than 3 individuals outside of practice.
Right.
And he was at Halloween parties and hanging out and doing
in the locker rooms, all that.
Locker rooms, and they find, and he had just done an interview, but they find out he tests positive for COVID, and that's when the whole story begins to fall apart. Now, so today they began to hand out sanctions. And I was wondering how they were going to handle this, because Rodgers stands by the fact that, hey, the team knew, the front office knew, they knew what was going on. And so, he's like, if I did something wrong, they were aware of it. I was never punished for it. So, hey, I am not what did he say was, I am not what did he say? A protester, not a protester, but an advocate for change, or whatever that word was. I can't think of the word that he used. My mom always calls me that. What is the word that I always say mom says?
Advocate or something?
Not an advocate. It's when those people who go out and they stand up, an activist. I'm not an activist, and this is just my life, and I believe in the rights of the human body, and people making all of this jargon. So now the fines have come out. He was fined a whole, are you ready for this? $14,000.
That's all
of his $134 million.
That's what I'm saying. That's all. Dropping the bucket.
And I think the team was
I'll just pay that right
fined.
now. Keep moving.
Yeah, the team was fined like something like $30,000 or something. It may have been more than that, but the fact of the matter is, they have basically given him a slap on the wrist. Do you think, Rob, as we look at this, and Aaron, do you think this would have been the same if this was Colin Kaepernick?
Oh no! Oh no! We know that. Please, of course not. Not to mention that we may find later on that some of the players, his teammates, may have been affected with COVID. Even though you can still get, I must point this out here, even though you're vaccinated, you can still contract COVID. COVID is only supposed to, the vaccine is supposed to protect you to a certain degree.
Absolutely.
So some of his teammates and even the coach may come down with COVID for all we know, based on being around Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, and if I get COVID, Rob, you better get your insurance policy because I'm filing a lawsuit, mister. I'm trying to figure out where we in the vicinity of one another any point that I might have contracted this or something.
But Colin Kaepernick, the first thing I thought about, I said, had that been Colin, he would have been, they'd be wrecked over the coals.
Well, it gives us an understanding as well that the NFL is able to pass judgments based upon the things that they want to do, and they punish whom they want to punish. They set examples for individuals that they want to set examples for. And I don't forget, I don't care what your Super Bowl halftime performances looks like. You make a deal with Rock Nation, which is financially beneficial to Rock Nation to bring Black entertainment in at halftime. But the fact of the matter is, I truly believe as the institution, one of the few institutions that referred to, agreed to the president, the former president, using terms as, we're cattle and we should be fired and we're thugs. And I don't agree that this is considered a fair punishment, but hey, it is what it is. I don't think there's going to be much fallout about it other than what people think. My biggest issue with this whole thing, right? Because I do believe people have the right to do what they want to with their body. Just stay away from me with whatever decision that you make.
I agree.
But my issue with this is his lack of accountability.
Right.
The fact that he, if I have offended anyone, then I want to, dude, you lied to America. Like, really, come out, apologize, own it.
Right.
Come on, Roger. And I like him as a quarterback. He's a beast of an athlete, but he's showing us that even though he's a champion on the field, he's still a punk on off the field.
Just remind not to set certain people up as idols.
Absolutely. So we have to be aware. Aaron was like, "Oh my gosh," she clutched her pearls when I said that. But the fact of the matter is, you're weak, and the real sign of a real man is when you own what you say and what you do. And so, come on, Rogers. I really like you as an individual, but man, this is really whack. You've offended people. You've lied to America. So just make the apology. All right, let's continue on. We're going to get going. All right, so the Senate finally passes. And I tell you, Rob, this entire thing drives me crazy. This whole process is bananas. The Senate finally passes a massive infrastructure bill, bipartisan vote.
They passed it first, and then the House of Representatives passed it.
Absolutely. And then the House has passed. So this is a done deal.
Right. After the House passes it, it goes to Biden's desk.
And he'll sign it into law. He's been waiting for this. So 1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, $550 billion in new funding. Now, I told you, if you remember this, Rob, we were having this conversation, and when they were giving out all of these dollars for this and dollars for COVID response and these dollars for these ARPA funds and all of these monies that were going everywhere, and we're paying kids to stay at home and paying kids to go to school, paying teachers to teach, paying teachers to wear red blouses, whatever it was. You remember I told you, I said, you can't just print money and give away money. It has to be based in something. And I started saying, I'm concerned about inflation, and see, people aren't able to get employers aren't able to get, people to work. So they're paying $12, $13, $14 to work at McDonald's. So now all of the other stuff, like no one wants to work at a Home Depot. If I work at Home Depot, I'm making $12 an hour, and then I can go to McDonald's and make $15. I'm going to McDonald's. So it's now people are moving to the company of the highest bidder. So now we have these, improve, which I think we probably need an increase on the minimum wage. But now we have companies that normally would not pay that much who are paying an increased wage. So what do you think is going to happen? It's going to be pass-through costs. They're going to pass it down. So everything that you have is going to cost more because they're paying their employees more. Everything that's happened. So gas is now astronomical back to the 1990 increase hike.
Well, that's not the president's fault because the president.
No, I didn't say anything about the president, but I said that this is the fallout
of the bill.
Not only of the bill, but just about when you give monies away and you create monies and money existed. We've been needing some things happening in our communities forever, and there was never any money. But all of a sudden, there's $400 billion for this and $300 billion for that, 1.2 trillion for this.
Well, let's look at it this way, Kareem. Now, supposedly this thing is not supposed to cost zero. It's supposed to cost zero money. And but compare that to the $1 trillion tax break that was done by the previous administration.
I
So
get
where
that.
did that money
Okay,
come from?
but no, I'm not talking about that, because when we know better,
Well,
we do better.
we're talking about the money.
And two
was
wrongs
coming
don't
from.
make a right. So
Okay.
I'm not, and what I'm talking about is not necessarily, I'm not looking at this bill.
Okay.
I'm looking at the fact that we are now seeing the repercussions of not being financially responsible with what we've been doing. Now, do we need some? Now, my question would have been, do we need to do all of this now? I mean, we've got more jobs and we have people to fill the jobs.
Yes.
So that's not the issue. We understand that the world stopped during COVID, and that it's going to take some time to jumpstart things. And so it's a need to get things up and running again. But I am now concerned about this gas prices. I'm concerned about the inflation. I'm now concerned, even with increased wages, our family's going to be able to put food on the table, because the price of, I'm a baking guy.
Yeah.
I hate baking and I love baking all at the same time. and I went, it was like 2 packs of bacon for $7. I was like, good Lord Almighty. Yeah. But anyways, we're going to have to deal with that. It's going to be coming up real soon. Rob, I want to stop right here. I'm going to pivot. Everything. That's what's on my mind. What's on my mind is, are we going to be able to afford these increases that are on the verge? We know that the government has some outs and some things that they can do in terms of Federal Reserves and making gas prices make sense again.
If it helps any, the fact that we pulled many of our troops and got out of Afghanistan, we're not funding that anymore. That may help a little bit.
I mean, are we going to be back there is going to be the question, I think. You're absolutely right, but are we going to be back in Afghanistan with the issues that are going on? Because, we left in the middle of trying to bring some stability to it, and things were getting worse while we were there. And now that
20
we're
years
gone,
is a long time.
It's a long time.
As a military man, I would not want to be in the same place for 20 years, doing the same thing for 20 years. I mean, if anything,
Rob, there are people that are here that are doing the same thing for 30 years, every single day of their lives.
But they have not, I've made 4 deployments during the Persian Gulf War there. Desert Storm, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, that is. And that was not fun going over there many times. It was a nice place to visit. Dubai's a nice place to visit, but making that deployment and doing things that we had to do on mission and whatnot with the Marines and SEAL teams and whatnot, that was interesting to a point, but it got boring after the second and third and fourth time.
Well, my point is this. We have some very challenging things that we're going to have to deal with moving forward. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think this is going to be a bloodbath moving into this next political season. It's going to be interesting to see what takes place. But I just hope that somehow we can reach within the deeper channels of who we are as Americans and come together. But I think everything that we see happening with inflation and all this other stuff, accompanied by all the funds that are going into the communities, accompanied by a number of jobs, how does that affect the stock market? I think it's going to be a bloodbath when it comes to the political season. I'm hoping that as Americans, we can arise above the fray and we can begin to show that we are really much better than what I'm hoping that we don't see moving in to 2022. All right, so I want to get over to talking to Erina, Reverend. Do I call you Reverend Erina McKissick?
Either way.
Okay, Reverend Erina McKissick. She is not just a reverend, but she is now. I've heard her minister before, so she is powerful in her own right. But she is the founder of something that, we were talking, and I knew that you were a part of it, and I was trying to wrap my mind around it. Okay. But something that is called A Life for a Life, right?
Yes.
And you had a conference just not too long ago called the Innocence Summit.
Absolutely.
All right. So I want you to share with me, first of all, A Life for a Life. What is it? Let's begin our conversation right there. I'm sure we're going to have a commercial break come up. But we'll get started in this conversation and pick up on the other side of the commercial break. What is A Life for a Life?
Okay, sure. So
before that, Erina, excuse me, share a little bit about yourself. Tell us who you are and how you ended up in the Saginaw community.
Wow. So Erina McKissick, born and raised in Saginaw, Michigan, product of the Saginaw Public School District, graduated from Arthur Hill and SASA, went off to Howard University, HU, and graduated there, came back home because of ministry, actually, came back and became a youth pastor on the south side of Saginaw, working in the same community that I grew up in. And so I've been here since then in ministry now for, close to 20 years. And
wow.
Still enjoying the work that I've been called to do.
Okay, awesome. All right. So how do we come up with a life for a life? Tell me what it is. Let's start there. What is a life for a life?
Sure. So, A Life for a Life Urban Initiative is a grassroots organization that was founded in 2013. I co founded the organization, and I say co founded because even though I've done the legwork and kind of been the face and the connecting person, the reason why this organization came about is because of a wrongfully convicted juvenile lifer that I was introduced to in 2010. Like I said, I was a youth pastor on the south side of Saginaw running a conference every summer for at-risk kids to help prevent them from either dying or going to prison. And Saginaw News wrote an article about the work that we were doing. And this young man got a hold of that article in prison, read about the work that we were doing, and wrote my church.
Wow.
And so it was crazy because he got the Saginaw newspaper. He wasn't at the Saginaw Correctional Facility. He wasn't, in the vicinity of the city. Somebody took a Saginaw newspaper to the prison where he was. He was able to read it and wrote our church. And he just shared his story and told us, thank you for the work that we were doing. He wished that something like that had existed when he was a kid, and maybe it would have been able to help prevent him from being where he was.
Now, how long ago was this?
That was 2010. 2010, I got the letter.
11 years ago.
Yep.
All right. And so now we have a life for a life.
Absolutely.
And I want you to share with me what exactly is it that you all do?
Yeah. So A Life for Life Urban Initiative is essentially an organization that helps create awareness and advocate for those who've been wrongfully convicted. And so what I found was that this juvenile lifer who had been wrongfully convicted, his name is Robert T. Hines. He's a native of Detroit, Michigan, has maintained his innocence for over 20 years. His story is not unique. Some of the facts are different, some of the issues surrounding his case are different, but there are so many other Roberts and Robertas, people who have been wrongfully convicted. And I was just blown away the more that I got to hear about his story, learn about his story, all these other stories that started coming out. The problem is,
Go ahead. You continue.
Yeah, the problem is getting people to actually care about the fact that these things are happening.
Because the story is, I didn't do it. Everyone's innocent in prison,
absolutely.
Right? Okay, so getting them to care about the fact and being able to decipher between what's real and what's not real.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead,
yes.
continue.
Yes, because you hear that stigma, that myth. Oh, everybody in prison says that they're innocent. Everybody in prison gets religion. Those are some of the same myths. But the truth is that there really are innocent people in prison, and they're trying to tell people, they're trying to get their story out, they're writing letters, they're trying to connect, and unfortunately they're not getting the response that they need. And because they're not getting that response, because nobody is really stepping up to the plate to say, I hear you, and let me at least investigate this to see if there's any truth to it, there's so many, not just people who have been affected behind the prison walls, but their families, right? And all the communities that they were stripped away from. It ricochets through so many other elements. So A Life for Life Urban Initiative, our job is to help create awareness about this issue. Our job is to help advocate for these individuals and to help make people care about what's going on.
Wow, this is so profound. When we were talking before, I was thinking that the percentage, there was like 5% of the incarcerations or the guilty verdicts that are passed down in our judicial system, were the ones that were wrongful. And you came to correct me in my numbers, which I love. And you said that number is actually purported to be between 2 to 10%.
Yes.
In terms of the number of wrongful convictions that we're seeing. So if that's the case, that means that we literally have hundreds of thousands of individuals who are incarcerated wrongfully and are waiting for an opportunity simply to plead they're innocent. I want to continue to talk to you about that. Okay. I want to talk to you about how we came into the space and why A Life for a Life, why talking about wrongful convictions. But I also want to ask you about those situations, about those men who are waiting to have their convictions overturned. We want you guys to stay tuned. Please lean into this conversation. Everyone in prison that says that they're innocent is not innocent, but there are hundreds of thousands of men and women who have been wrongfully convicted by our system. And it's time that we right those wrongs. We'll be back with more after this commercial break.
United Shades of Gray will continue on WSGW. You're listening to United Shades of Gray on WSGW.
All right, this is Kareem Bowen, and we're back from that short break, and we're going to continue our conversation. Miss Erina McKissick, Reverend Erina McKissick, we have her in the studio, and we're talking about a life for a life, and she was sharing with us what a life for a life was. Now I want you to turn the corner a little bit. I want to ask, why a life for a life? How did this come about? You told me about the young man and how he came to you. But what made you know that this was not all that there was and we have to do more?
Absolutely. So I mentioned that letter that I got from Robert Hines in 2010. Our ministry kind of adopted him and made him an honorary member of our young adult ministry. And so through that, I got an opportunity, like I said, to learn more about his story. The more I learned, the more I knew I couldn't just pretend like it was just going to go away. I'm a preacher, right? So of course I was praying for him, but I was like, man, I got to do more than pray. And I really, asked God, like, what can I do? Like, I'm not a lawyer. I can't do anything in that lane. This is completely out of my realm. Completely, you want to talk Bible, we can talk Bible, but what am I supposed to do with this? This is not my lane. And man, God just gave me the vision for a Life for a Life urban initiative, and this idea that I could help create this hub where there was information and resources and stories of innocence, and where we connect volunteers to experts. I am not the expert, right? But I am a bridge builder. I am a connector. I can bring people together, people who can help with some of these underlying issues to really help deal with this wrongful conviction thing. And because my background is in PR, I can sound the alarm and I can make a lot of noise. And so I've been doing that for a few years, since 2013.
Since 2013.
Yeah.
One of the most difficult things in any particular situation is getting the right people together in a room.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't necessarily have to be the expert if you know who the experts are and you're able to mobilize people to come together for a particular cause. And so I think that is wonderful. So we had something that took place, and I'm assuming that this is something you've been doing for a while,
Mm-hmm.
but it seems like Saginaw was the hub for this latest thing, the summit, the Innocence Summit that you had. Even though this was something, I was watching one of your individuals, man, a lawyer from Alabama. He was absolutely amazing. But everyone that was a part of the Innocence Summit, which was an online conference, was absolutely amazing. Tell us about this summit. Who is involved with this summit? And is this the first time that you've done something of this magnitude?
Yes. So Saturday, October 23rd, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., we held the Innocence Summit on Facebook Live. And it was our first annual Innocence Summit. We had done virtual events prior to, where there were phenomenal panels, individuals that were on talking about various issues surrounding prison reform and mass incarceration, wrongful convictions. Those events ran for about 90 minutes or so. And so we had been doing those for about a year and a half. And we got this vision that, man, we need to enlarge this. We need to do something bigger and bring more individuals together. So this was a national event. People from all across the country were involved, were speakers as on the Innocence Summit. One who was joining from Africa, actually, sharing on that morning. And so, yeah, the Innocence Summit, it brought together these different experts. Basically, if you just imagine a puzzle, when you're talking about prison reform, criminal justice reform, it's a large puzzle. And we grabbed a lot of different people who represent pieces of that puzzle from across the country. We brought them together for one day, and they each had different presentations, information, calls to action that they were able to share with our virtual audience.
All right. Could you please share with those that are listening? Because even though this event has already taken place online via social media, we can still go back and take a look at this, because
Absolutely.
I'm going to tell you, Erin, I tip my hat to you, and this is why I wanted you to be a part of this program today, is because we've been talking about issues that exist. We've been talking about how systemic racism, since the whole George Floyd thing, has really reared its head in an interesting way.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen systemic racism in our healthcare systems, the tremendous biases that exist in healthcare, and this is a matter of life and death in terms of how those things are operating. We've seen it happening in our criminal justice systems. We've seen these things happen in terms of how protesters are seen versus militia. And so we see the differences in terms of how individuals are treated in a multiplicity of systems that exist in our country.
Sure.
You're dealing and focusing in on the criminal justice system. All right. Is there, and this is always a very interesting conversation to have on this show,
Mm-hmm.
according to what you have seen, is there, quote unquote, systemic racism in our judicial systems?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hands down. There's definitely systemic racism. I mean, anytime African Americans can make up 13% of our US population, but they make up 47% of the exonerations. Yeah, there's systemic racism, right? And we have to be able to acknowledge that. Anytime that 1 in 4 Black men are more apt to go to prison during their lifetime than to go to college, Yeah, there's systemic racism. The fact that African American men are more likely to be convicted of murder, 7 times more likely than white men to be convicted of murder, 12 times more likely than white men to be convicted of drug possession, things like that. And so on the surface, right, that looks one way. But as you begin to really unpack that and talk through that, why is that the case? You definitely find out that systemic racism is real. It exists, has existed for a very, very long time, and is deeply entrenched into the fabric of our society.
Okay, what do you say to someone who's listening to this and is saying, listen, if they wouldn't do the crime, they wouldn't have to worry about doing the time. If they weren't out selling drugs, they wouldn't get go to prison on a drug conviction. If they weren't running around carrying guns like they're in a movie off of TV, Boys in the Hood, then they wouldn't be getting locked up. And so that's not systemic racism. They're just violent.
Yeah, so I got to address that in 2 parts, right? First
Okay.
of all, we're making the assumption that everyone who is convicted of these crimes actually did commit these crimes.
Exactly.
And that's the whole point that we're trying to make about wrongful convictions. Listen, according to the National Registry of Exonerations, 2,887 exonerations have existed since 1989. Right? That represents over 25,600 years of life lost. We're talking about people who didn't do what it was that they were convicted of. And there are hundreds of thousands of more people still sitting in a cell waiting for somebody to exonerate them. Just in 2018, we had 151 exonerations. In 2019, we had 143 exonerations. This is still going on. So let's put aside the assumption, the generalization that everyone in prison, everyone who's convicted actually did what it was that they were convicted for. We have to deal with that, right? That's a separate issue. Now let's talk about, okay, the people who actually did do a crime. Now let's talk through fair sentencing.
Okay.
Fair sentencing, right? There is systemic racism in the way that African Americans are sentenced for the exact same crime.
But justice is
white
blind.
people.
How is there systemic racism in the sentencing process?
When you look at the crimes that we're talking about, so let's take one that's often brought up, right? The issue of crack cocaine. Right. So you take a white man who is found in possession of having cocaine, and you take a black man who has been found in possession of crack. Right. We understand that that's a variant of the exact same drug, but it is not considered to be the same when we're talking about sentencing. That white man is going to get a lesser sentence for being charged with the possession of cocaine than that African American man is going to get for being charged with possession of crack. Unfair sentencing. We're talking about situations we can talk about even with juveniles, right? The way that juveniles are sentenced, this idea that a juvenile can be sentenced more harshly. An African-American juvenile boy is going to be sentenced more harshly for the same exact crime that a white juvenile has committed. He may be given some form of probation, right? Some form of community service for the exact same thing versus that black boy that's going to be locked up for a year, 2 years for the same exact crime. So yeah, when we talk about fair sentencing is definitely unfair, and the system is not colorblind. We say that justice is blind or colorblind, but it's definitely not.
Okay.
I should interject here that we need to point out, which is very important, that a lot of the reasons why blacks and other minorities get the sentences that they do is because they have poor legal representation.
Absolutely.
We got you, Rob.
Sometimes the public defender he or she is so overwhelmed,
right,
they don't get the proper legal representation that they need.
Yeah.
Now, if you have money and you can hire a lawyer,
sure,
or you have people who are backing you up there that can pay for a lawyer for you,
sure,
then chances are you can convince the judge and or the jury for certain things, and then you get that sentence reduced. Or the district attorney and the lawyer make certain deals and whatnot, and then your sentence is reduced. But that's very rare. You have to have money. That's why a lot of our people that are in jail right now are where they are, because they didn't have the proper legal representation to back them up.
Sure, absolutely. Poverty definitely plays a role in that.
All right. So when we look at this, and we're looking at all these factors, and we're saying that systemic racism is an issue, are there any particular areas or crimes that exist that we see a greater disparity as it relates to African Americans with their wrongful convictions than other areas?
So definitely when it comes to murder, and I'll repeat those numbers for wrongful convictions based off of the National Registry of Exoneration. When it comes to being wrongfully convicted of murder, African American men are 7 times more likely to be convicted than whites. And so that is startling in and of itself. The kind of sentencing that murder carries, for sure. We're talking about people being locked up for their lifetime. Because of something that they did not do. And yes, because of the way that African Americans are just criminalized right off the bat, targeted right off the bat, the long history of that in this country, it just makes it more likely for us to be charged with those kind of crimes.
Okay, there was an attorney that was on there, and we're trying to see if we can get him here on the show. What was his name again from Alabama?
Yeah, so that was Bill Shafer.
Bill Shafer, the man.
I'm sorry, Benjamin Shafer.
Benjamin Shafer.
Attorney
Benjamin Shafer.
Yes, Equal Justice Initiative.
Man, so he is doing some wonderful work down in Louisiana, working with individuals who have been wrongfully convicted. And I want to just say once again, because some of the things that he said, I wrote them down so that I would forever keep them. He said that people said, so how did you get involved with the criminal justice system? And his response was he would never call it the criminal justice system. He calls it the criminal system and won't use criminal justice until he sees justice in the system. I thought that was so profound. And then he went on to say that the death penalty is the uncle or the cousin to lynching. And I thought it was like, wow, this is really powerful. But he was talking about some of the injustices and the inequities that exist in our system. How do we begin to deal with these issues of inequities within our criminal justice system?
Yeah, so I think there's no easy answer to that, right? There is no quick fix to systemic racism. Like I said, it is deeply entrenched into the fabric of our country. I think what is important is having conversations like the ones we were able to have at the Innocent Summit, where you bring together these different experts, these different decision makers, these different thought leaders. You bring them together so that we can connect the dots. Essentially, that's what the Innocent Summit helped us do, right? Because if I am an expert in my particular lane and I'm pushing my agenda and my call to action, but there's somebody else sitting across the table who I haven't had a conversation with, and they could really help me, like we could get on board and do this together, right? It's the strength and unity that we need. We have so many amazing people doing great things across the country, but they're doing them in their little corner with their four and no more. You know what I mean? And so the goal of the Innocent Summit was like, yo, let's all come to the table together. Let's have this one big conversation and let's share. Let's share information. Let's share resources. Let's unite. Let's do these things together so that we can really make a difference. That's where it begins. It begins by us coming together and acknowledging that I need you and you need me. And the only way we're going to make a difference is if we do this together, because like I said, it's so deeply entrenched into our society. Okay.
So I would imagine that in order for a project like this, and you know, we're going to go back in, that means that there would have to be some litigation. That means that there would need to be lawyers. And we understand that lawyers work by billable hours. How do we fund this type of work? Is this volunteer? Our lawyers, you know, are we raising money from some pot of money that we're able to pay for legal representation? How do we get these individuals to come in? And do
lawyers pay act pro bono? How many are working pro bono?
Absolutely,
a lot of them have to do pro bono cases to maintain their license and their reputation.
So how are we funding or getting this whole process underway, that we're able to get attorneys in that are passionate about their support of overturning some of these convictions?
Yeah, so I think, you know, what you just said about the pro bono work is really, really important when you can pull in those kind of people who have a passion for it. I think what's important to note, though, is something that's really taking off across the country is when you're talking about trying to overturn a wrongful conviction, it takes about 8 years to overturn a wrongful conviction going through the court system.
So it only takes, because it's some of these cases seem like they take, you know, less than a week.
Right.
And people are convicted,
right,
and they're sent to jail, and they're lives are destroyed, families ripped apart immediately within a
Right.
week's time.
That's right.
Absolutely.
But to correct what we've done wrong takes 8 years
It
to
takes about
correct.
8 years.
And in that 8 years, I implore everybody, if you even you think your relative is guilty or you're not sure, maintain contact with him or her, because that's important, because that 8 years or 10 years or 15 years is hard.
Yeah.
And if they lose a connection with their family, then they lose all hope there, and then they become the criminal that they said they were not at some point.
And you're speaking to something that I think, Rob, is a very important point. How do you remain that you're your focus? How do you remain strong? The mental will. I was listening to one of the young men at the top of the program that you guys did with the Innocent Summit, and he was talking about how his conviction was overturned,
Mhm.
and it was a challenge mentally to stay focused. He knew that he was innocent, but just to continually have to go through this routine of going, three meals in a cot,
Mhm.
going through the process every single day, having to show up on the yard with people who are convicted.
Right.
And it seems as though no one is listening to your cry for help.
Right.
What do you all do? Or is there anyone out there that is helping these young men and women to emotionally and mentally stay strong? What do we do in those situations?
Yeah. So just like you said, it takes an emotional and mental toll on them inside, and it does on their families as well. So one of the things that we're doing just as a church and as a ministry is being able to really minister to the families on the outside. As far as the guys on the inside, I know you're referencing Kevin Harrington, who is an exoneree, and he talked about going through 3 separate trials with hung juries for his conviction. Yeah, when you're going through something like that, man, it takes its toll, on you mentally and takes its toll on you emotionally. There are different organizations that try to give inmates an outlet, like the PCAP program, which is a art and creative writing program where they go into the prison and give the men and women an outlet. They allow them to be able to draw and create these beautiful artworks and to be able to write. And they actually put them on display and do a big showcase in the community. Things like that, people that run those kind of programs, there's different educational programs, things to kind of help keep them busy while they're waiting out the time, while they're fighting for their freedom, helping them build themselves up educationally. So that's really great. If I could just jump back to Robert Hines, when he went into prison wrongfully at the age of 17, he could not read. He read at a 3rd grade level, did not graduate from high school, obviously went to prison at 17. But while he was inside, he learned how to read.
Okay.
He got his GED. He's completed college courses now and has several certifications. So programs and things like that allow them to be able to better themselves. Even though he's been in for 20 years fighting for his freedom, when he comes out, he will come out so much better than it was that he went in. So I celebrate ministries and community programs and teachers and advocates and people who help make sure that there are those kinds of resources available.
Wow, I think this is so phenomenal. So if I am interested in, well, let's take a step back. I have someone in my family, and this is just, I'm saying if I have someone in my family that I believe was wrongfully convicted, they believe that they were innocent.
Mm-hmm.
What should they do? Where should they begin the process of getting someone connected to someone like you, or an organization like A Life for Life,
Mm-hmm.
or some of these organizations that are assisting? Where should they turn? How do they get connected? What should they do first?
Absolutely. I'm going to say the first thing that you want to do is going to be your fastest possible source of relief. You want to look for the nearest conviction integrity unit wherever you are. There are 96 of them across the country right now. You want to look for a conviction integrity unit. I mentioned that it's taken about 8 years to go through the court system to get someone exonerated. It's taking about a year and a half once a conviction integrity unit starts working on your case. They are able to do things that you don't have to deal with going through the court system. So you don't have to have an attorney. A lot of families are worried about that. How are we going to pay for somebody to help? You don't have to have an attorney to be able to turn in a conviction integrity unit application. So I'm going to tell you that's the first thing you want to do. Find out where your conviction integrity unit is, and then you want to talk to your loved one. You want to get them to submit an application. That conviction integrity unit is going to take a look at that application. And if there is a claim of actual innocence there, if they're able to determine that, just kind of by reading through it, there's some factors that they're going to look for, then they're going to put that application in the queue. they're going to be able to run a full investigation on your loved one to help get them exonerated. That is the fastest course of relief if you're looking to help someone in that way.
Awesome. So how do people connect with you and what you're doing with A Life for a Life?
Absolutely. So you can find us on Facebook at A Life for a Life. You can also email us at info@alifeforalife.org. But we're very active on our Facebook page, always posting updates and information there. So please connect with us on social media or shoot us an email. Again, we're going to help connect you to resources, information. We're that hub for you. We're going to help get you in the right direction if you reach out.
Awesome. All right. So when you look at, what do you guys have? Do you have anything on the dockets? I know you say you do some things with the families. What kinds of things are you providing for families?
Absolutely. So in next year, 2022, we're looking at providing a new program for children who have parents who have been wrongfully incarcerated. We're looking at, we're working with some mental health specialists right now, creating a specific program just for those children because their experiences are really unique and they deal with a lot of issues. And so we want to help with that. And so we're going to be working with parents and kids, and we're really excited about being able to tackle that mental health piece. So we need volunteers. We need people to help with our board of directors. Really, really encouraging you guys to get involved.
Awesome. All right. And then lastly, the conference that I saw, how can people tap in and see this conference? Because it was actually mind-blowing to me, the information that you guys provided. How can they see that?
Yes, you can go to our Facebook page. It's right there pinned to the top still because people are watching it and sharing it. So again, A Life for a Life Urban Initiative on Facebook. Go back. You can watch that video right there.
All right, Erin, really quick, 1 minute. What is it that you would want those who are listening to this conversation to know? How can they lean in? How they can, what is the thing that you want them to know about A Life for a Life?
Yeah, I want you to know that you don't have to be an expert to be involved and to make a difference. I am not. I am a regular person. I'm just a preacher and a mom, but I care, and you should care too. And you can do something. You may not know what that is right now, but we're going to help you find out if you reach out.
All right. I want to thank you so much for your time here on the show today. An hour goes by so fast, but I want to say to those of you who are listening, we often talk about how, whether there is systemic racism, whether there are issues, whether there are wrongful incarcerations that Black and brown folks have to go through. We understand by looking at these numbers that this is definitely a big yes. I want you all to begin to understand that if you're not a part of the solution, then you are a part of the problem. And we want you to begin to lean in. How do I lean in? You're saying, how can I make a difference? Because I'm a good intending individual. I say, get in touch with Reverend Erin McKissick and her wonderful organization, A Life for a Life. I say, go to the Facebook page. Step one, let's go to the Facebook page, A Life for a Life, on social media. Let's pay attention to the stories. Listen to the overturned convictions. This is not something that we're making up, but this is real deal Holyfield. This is the stuff that's happening every single day in our penal institutions. And this is why we say there is a need for a change of the system, of the structure, so that we can have equity, not only in life and in living and in business, but in our justice systems. I want to thank you guys for tuning in today. We'll have Erin in here with more information, more conversations on race in America. Thank you all for tuning in. Grace and peace.